Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Memorial DFS Tactics Show. We are here to answer all of your last-minute questions for the DFS slate for this week at Muirfield Village and the Memorial. Who should you be playing? Who should you pivot to, fade away from, the top plays in each area of the price board. We've got your updated forecast. We've got projected ownerships, everything you need to dominate this week's slate for the Memorial. Looking forward to it. Got the poll question typed up as well. Should be a fun show, so I hope to hear from you all throughout the evening. Make sure to jump in chat with your questions. So let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted research around the past winners of the Memorial, some course information, and the players in the field this week who follow the same pattern and patterns that the previous winners have. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow over at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show, so be on the lookout for that later on this evening. If you want to see that every week, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you with his own version of information and statistics throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat, as he is gracious enough to host me over there. We continue the DFS talk later on this evening and every Wednesday evening. After the DFS Tactics show, we talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board, players we're fading, all of that good stuff. So follow him over on social media, show him some support, and subscribe to that article. Again, it is free to do, by the way. Lastly, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. I see a couple of you in chat, so I'll get to you momentarily after I finish the intro, but would love to hear from you all. In addition to your answer for the poll question, want to hear who your winner is, who are you fading away from and pivoting to. How challenging was it to make some lineups today with no 5K range? Did you have trouble fitting Scotty Scheffler, or are you playing Scotty Scheffler? So I would love to hear from you all. So make sure to put it in chat and, again, answer that poll question when I post it. But let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Memorial. And we start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. Good evening, Stewie and Brobarian. Much appreciated. Thanks for jumping in chat. Stewie, I believe this is the first time you have joined live for a show, so welcome. It's very, very much appreciated. For those who don't know, Stewie, Gabe and I actually participate in his DFS weekly DFS contest. So go show Stewie some love as well. Follow him over on social media. He also provides a lot of good information throughout the week. And good to see you, Brobarian. Good to see you, P. Much appreciated. Looks like it's a full show, full house this evening. Looking forward to it. Let's try and continue some momentum from last week's RBC Canadian and really pick up where we left off at the PGA. We'll ignore the Charles Schwab since that was a disaster on my part. But it's good to see everybody in chat. All right, so let me post this poll question very, very quickly. Take a drink and then we'll get into it. So again, with only four choices available to me, I had to squeeze as much in here in this poll question as possible. So with the assumption that you cannot play anybody from the other groups, which of these would you make your core? Would it be Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Sung Jae, and Keegan? Would it be Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Russell Henley, and Siwoo Kim? Would it be Xander, Ludwig Aubert, Sam Burns, and Tom Kim? Or would it be Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, and Tony Finau? Now, I try to leave each one of those groups with the same amount of money. Roughly comes out to about high 6,000s, give or take. Now, Scotty's group is a little bit different. I believe his came out to 64 or 6,500 just due to the fact that I was squeezing a 12 and a 9K in there. But given the restriction that you can't play anybody else from those other groups, who or which of those groups would you make your core? So I'd be interested to hear from the viewers and from chat in that regard. But we start our show, as we always do, with the forecast over at Windfinder. The super forecast shows that we have quite a bit of wind in the forecast for Dublin and Muirfield. Quite a bit tomorrow, although tomorrow morning starts off relatively calm in terms of sustained wind, but definitely very, very gusty. And then the sustained winds increase throughout the day, whereas Friday looks pretty hectic. Not a lot of, or no precipitation, I should say, in the forecast as of now, but a whole lot of wind in the forecast, especially for Friday. Gusts into the 30s, sustained winds into the upper teens, maybe even low 20s. With this being a small field, a signature event, there is no wave stack to try and target. So instead, what I'm going to suggest is that any player who does not perform well in the wind, that you give them a very, very serious downgrade, considering the amount of wind that is in the forecast for both Thursday and Friday. Now, we do have a small cut, so there will be a few cuts made, and we want to make sure that the players are good in the wind. In fact, you see, no, it's getting cut off at the very top. They're actually supposedly in a tornado warning up there in Dublin, Ohio. But we looked at Thursday and Friday. Saturday, much the same, although it looks like it could be pretty calm in the morning. Wind picks up quite a bit in the afternoon, and much the same for Sunday. So again, we'll come back into the super forecast. Looks like wind is going to be in the picture all 4 days. So I do not want to consider, or I'm going to seriously downgrade any considerations of players who are just bad in the wind, considering this forecast. So with that, we will move to Fantasy National, and because of the forecast we just saw, in the last 2 years, in moderate and windy conditions, our top total performers have been Scotty, Rory, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Xander, Wyndham Clark, JT, Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors, and Denny McCarthy. If you want to continue on down, maybe to the top 15 or so, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, Ricky Fowler, Sahith Theegala, Sam Burns. There's your top 15 in terms of total wind performance the past 2 years, being moderate and windy conditions. And again, I think, and I don't quote me on this, but I believe the cutoff for windy is 17 plus or more in terms of sustained winds. So we get a lot of gusts that'll get into the 20s in a lot of tournaments, but the sustained winds aren't that high. So that's why I always check the moderate and windy filter in that case. The other side of the coin, players who have not been good in the wind the past couple of years, and give these players a pretty significant downgrade considering what we just saw in terms of the forecast. Tom Hoagie, Davis Riley, Tom Kim. We've talked about this a lot, but Tom Kim is getting hurt by the fact that his moderate performance has been pretty bad. He's been actually very good in the wind, to be fair to him. It's his moderate. He's lost a half a shot per round in moderate wind, so that's why he is getting hurt. I know a lot of people tend to ask about that because he is good in the wind. It's the moderate that hurts him. Seamus Power, Taylor Pendrith, Brant Snedeker, Davis Thompson, Mac Hughes, Jake Knapp, Cam Young, Peter Malnati, and so on down. You can see the players there who have not performed well in the wind, moderate and windy conditions, the past couple years. We did a whole lot of reviews and overviews this week. We looked at difficult relative to par. We looked at Jack Nicklaus designs, since this is the Jack Nicklaus design. We looked at long courses. We looked at a lot of things like that. I will tell you now, as we get ready to shift gears and go into the mixed condition model, that I really focused on this difficult relative to par filter. The Memorial is traditionally very, very difficult, and I just don't see that changing with the amount of wind that is in the forecast. I mean, every single round the past 5 years, has been difficult. So I do not see that changing. If it does not play difficult this week, I will be completely boned. Just to be honest, I'll be boned because I went heavily into the difficult relative to par filter. But with that, enough of that. Let's actually talk about the mixed condition model that I made for the Memorial this week. We start with 10% off the tee with the filter, difficult relative to par. We just talked about how difficult Memorial is and traditionally has been year over year. And I do think that the off the tee will play a bigger portion due to the difficulty. There are some forced layups where you have to find the fairway, and there are some forced carries where you just simply have to have length to succeed here. So it was also interesting to see on Monday night that the distance gradually year over year since 2019 had increased in importance. While you'll see that there is no driving distance by itself in the mixed condition model, that's kind of factoring into the bump in percentage, 10% off the tee when scoring is difficult relative to par. 15% approach. Look, this is my preferred shot type. I've mentioned this for seemingly years now. It's the type of player that I prefer to target in DFS and on the PGA Tour in general. I think it's the most conducive shot type for sustained success. So 15% in approach, and Memorial backs that up as well. 5% around the green, and I really did want to add extra percentage to this, but I also have several metrics in the mixed condition model, so I was only able to put 5% here, and I think that's a little bit light. These greens are small. They're going to play smaller due to the fact that they're usually fast, lightning even. They're firm. So players are going to have to get up and down and scramble and whatnot. I do think this is a little bit light, but this essentially the remaining percent I had left. So 5% around the green when scoring is difficult relative to par. You might ask why I didn't put long rough. Well, Muirfield has quite a few bunkers around as well, so I didn't want to ignore that portion of a player's around the green game. And knowing that Muirfield is difficult, I just set that as the filter. 5% in bent lightning putting. Year over year, as driving distance has increased and off the tee has increased in importance, putting has slightly decreased year over year. So I did want to focus on the players who are adept at putting on lightning bent greens, but I did not want to factor it in too heavily. So 5% there, 15% in greens gained when scoring is difficult relative to par. You see how many filters I have the difficult relative to par filter. As I mentioned, if this does not play difficult, I will just be a fish out of water, essentially. I will not do very well. I am pretty much all in on the fact that this will be difficult. The tied for the most important metric along with strokes gained approach is greens. We saw that year over year, it just led to a lot of correlation in terms of upper leaderboard success and players finding the greens here in regulation. 5% in scrambling. This is, to me, a little bit of a hidden aspect of the around the green as well. So 5% scrambling when it's difficult. And I wanted to include scrambling because there is water throughout the entirety of Muirfield. 13 holes with water in play. So some players will be scrambling from their tee ball if they happen to find the penalty. So it's not just around the green that players will be scrambling. They could be scrambling from off the tee or maybe with their second shot. So I did want to see the players who are adept at scrambling when scoring's difficult. 10% in birdies or better gained. And this was very adamant and very, very clear Monday night when we went through Microsoft Excel and the past 5 years of data here at Muirfield, that the past 5 years, birdies and eagles, but mostly birdies, have risen fairly significantly year over year, and with that, a decline in bogey avoidance. So that's why I don't have any bogey avoidance, and that's another area where I might be weak in this mixed condition model. Normally, if you're thinking that pars are good scores, you want to look at bogey avoidance. But Muirfield has shown year over year that the bogey avoidance has dwindled in importance. So that's why I have 10% birdies or better gained when scoring is difficult, because there are a couple of good eagle chances. One par 5 on the front and one par 5 on the back. I believe it's the fourth. I mean, we could go to the course breakdown really quickly if we needed to. But there is one very scoreable par 5 on the front and one very scoreable par 5 on the back that do yield an eagle 2 to 3% of the time, which is a decent amount for a PGA hole. So 10% there with birdies or better gained. The rest of the mixed condition model is directly due to the scorecard and what length these holes play. I spent a lot of time talking about the par 3s Monday night and how I was just going to look at these two ranges. That's generally about the only range that Muirfield has. Very, very rarely will a par 3 fall under 175. Most of the time, it's in these two ranges. 10% in par 4s, 5% in 450 to 500 par 4s. A little bit of emphasis on the par 4s, yes, but we saw Monday night again, the players who have consistently played well year over year here, Scotty Scheffler, Jordan Spieth, Xander Schauffele, these guys have taken care of the par 4s here at Muirfield. So I absolutely wanted to put that in the mixed condition model and factor that in. 5% on the range that happens to be the most prevalent and the most important at Muirfield. And then finally, because we have 4 par 5s, we do not want to ignore those par 5s. 3 of them fall into this range, the 550 to 600. The one that does not is at 547, so you can easily see that moving into this range on a day or two when they move pin positions and tees and whatnot. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I've made for the Memorial this week. Again, hopefully I have provided you the reasonings why I have the metrics that I do, the percentages that I do in them, and provided you some feedback or some information that I could be weak. Again, if this does not play difficult, I will be a fish out of water. It'll just be really bad for me this week because I am all in on the fact that I think Muirfield is going to be difficult this week. I don't have any bogey avoidance. So if bogey avoidance is more important this year than has been in recent past. I'll be a little weak to that. If around the green matters more, which I think it will, I'll be weak to that. Again, I just kind of ran out of percentage. But there is the mixed condition model that I have made for the Memorial this week. We will move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings. And just as a reminder, Gabe was kind enough to share his sources, projected ownerships as well, so that'll be over here off to the side. For new viewers, for your information, for any returning viewers, to remind you, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The F&GC rank, which is a numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model that we just went over, the metrics and the percentages in them. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course in the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. So you see Scotty Scheffler and Xander and Siwoo and Cantlay, these guys who traditionally play the Memorial well year in and year out. That's why their number is so low. And the third part of my rankings, we are playing DFS. We are trying to find unique options. So projected ownership per Fantasy National is the third facet of my rankings that get calculated in. Hey, good evening, Awaken. Much appreciated jumping into chat here. I had a dream someone was holding a sign with Iceberg. Ludwig. We'll get into it. I like Ludwig. He didn't rate out well for one particular reason, and we'll get into that as we go through the price board. But my rankings for the Memorial go as such. Scotty, big surprise, I know, being the number 1 player in my rankings. Xander, second. Rory, third. Cantlay, fourth. And Siwoo Kim round out my top 5. Victor, Denny McCarthy, Max Homa, Wyndham Clark, and Corey Connors round out my top 10. I don't think anybody is going to be terribly shocked about the players that are in my top 10. You can always argue the ordering. I was a little surprised to see Siwoo rise to as high as 5th. But, I mean, 5th in strokes gained approach, 5th in off the tee when it's difficult relative to par. That is what's really catapulting him. And the fact that he has played Memorial so well year in, or at least in the past 5 years. McCarthy getting helped, even though he's got a few negative metrics. He's getting helped by the fact that he is relatively unique compared to everyone else up here. He has played pretty darn well here at the Memorial. Again, runner-up last year in a playoff. And he is the number 1 putter on Lightning Bent, and he's the number 1 scrambler when it's difficult relative to par. Third in these shorter par 3s. So he's got a lot going for him as well. I don't want to spend too much time talking about my rankings. Let's just go ahead and go through the price board, figure out where members of Fantasy National and members or our general public, our fellow contestants, seem to be going, and figure out the players that we might want to pivot to away from the chalk. So in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 4 players. Scotty at 12.5, Rory at 11.1, Xander at 10.9, and Victor at 10.2. You see all these players are top 6 in my ranking, so it is very hard for me to differentiate between these 4 in terms of a true ranking or fading or anything like that. Scotty, no explanation needed, number 1 or number 2 in majority of these metrics that we gather. Rory's been playing very well. Xander coming off his PGA championship and his first major win. Victor's played well recently. I like all 4 of these guys. The question becomes, if you are going to play Scotty Scheffler, you're going to have to find a ton in the low 7s, or you're going to have to be comfortable going into the 6s. And I'm going to be honest with you, other than one person in Fantasy National, it doesn't look like the 6s are getting much love. So when we make lineups later on this evening, It looks like it's Scotty and a whole bunch of sevens. Seems to be the way the general public is making their Scotty lineups. And I don't think I am too keen on that. I do have a couple of 6K plays I want to recommend for you all. But if I'm in the 10Ks, look, I'm going to Victor. A lot of it has to do with the fact that he's the cheapest. Because they're 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the rankings just by the numbers. So it's very, very hard to separate these 4. So I'll go with the cheapest. Even though he's not the most unique per Fantasy National, he is the most unique per Gabe Source. So Victor Hovland anywhere. So Gabe Source has 14.5%, 18% per Fantasy National. That is the biggest discrepancy of ownership in the 10Ks. Xander, going to be extremely popular, anywhere between 19 and 22%. Rory, anywhere between 15 to 19%. And then, of course, Scotty's going to be your most projected owned player. And as I did a few weeks ago, are you willing to take the chance at fading him? It's a dangerous game. He struggled at the Charles Schwab. I looked really darn smart for the first round when he shot +2, and then Scotty did Scotty things and I lost. Because he went 68, 64, or whatever ridiculous 2 days that he had. So are you willing to fade him? That's the question you got to ask. In the 10Ks, like I said, I'm probably going Hovland most often just because he's the cheapest. I like all 4 of these guys. I think I'm going to have to fade Scheffler because you just can't play everybody. And his pricing is a little bit prohibitive considering we don't have any 5Ks. Having said that, I can't call it a full fade. I'm sure I'll have him a time or two just to cover myself. But his pricing is rather prohibitive. So I'll go Hovland first. It's really tough to differentiate Xander and Rory for me. I'll probably go Rory second, but it's really close. 2A and 2B, really. And then Scheffler fourth, and I really like Scheffler this week. It's just his price is prohibitive, and he's going to be so widely owned, I'm willing to take that chance that if he does struggle by Scotty standards, meaning he falls outside the top 15 or whatever, I'm going to gain quite a bit on our fellow contestants. Moving into the 9s, Colin Morikawa, Obear, Cantley, Justin Thomas, Tommy Fleetwood, and Hideki. We have one clear pivot in the 10Ks, at least per Gabe Source. It's Hideki at 9.5%. Now, Fantasy National members seem to really, really like Hideki at 14%. Fantasy National is ignoring Tommy Fleetwood, whereas Gabe Source has Tommy Fleetwood at 15%. So whichever source you trust most, go with that. Having said that, it is very clear that Colin Morikawa is going to be the second most owned player in the slate. 22% per Fantasy National, 22 to 23% per Gabe Source. And I like Colin Morikawa, but I'm going to fade him. I am, because I would much rather just spend up to Victor Hovland. He is that much higher in my rankings. Morikawa can struggle on some lightning bent greens too. The irons are much better than what he has shown in the recency. Yes, he's a premier player, but this is all simply about ownership and the other players around his price. Obear makes a lot of sense that his game would fit this course. Having said that, he's falling in my rankings, Awaken, due to the fact that he has not played the Memorial. And the Memorial, year in and year out, shows to be one of the more predictive courses on tour. If you've had success at the Memorial, you tend to have success. Now, it's not to say that he can't play well here. We just don't know. And that's why I have to set this number at least a little arbitrarily high, in case there's something about the course that doesn't fit his eye. We just don't know until he plays it. So he's really getting hurt by this right here. The fact that this number is arbitrarily high because he has never played here. He's a little bit unique, a little bit more unique than I would have thought. Anywhere between 12 to 14%. Again, I think it's fine. Do be aware that he has tended to struggle when it's been difficult. 70th and around the green when it's been difficult to par. 51st in scrambling. That's generally not been his favorite type of course. Has been the most difficult. He's a premier player. I like Aubert. I think it's a good fit, but that's why he didn't rate out well. For me, in the 9Ks, I am all about some Patrick Cantlay. All about some Patrick Cantlay. 12.5% per Fantasy National, 13.5% per Gabe Source. You see this course value. He's a two-time champion here, 2019 and 2021, maybe 2022. No, 2021. Two-time champion here. The irons are better than what has been shown in the past 3 months. Look, he just plays difficult courses and difficult tests of golf well. Top 10 in greens. Third off the tee when it's difficult. Still goes low when it's difficult. You may look at his major championship performances. He's generally right there in contention, even though he hasn't won one. So I do like Patrick Cantlay quite a bit. This course value is extremely high or extremely good, extremely low, I should say. And not that this is a big deal, but let me show you this pattern just very, very quickly of Patrick Cantlay on the Memorial, or at the Memorial. It was quite interesting to see this. First year he plays it, 35th. Then a top 5 and a win. 32nd, first and a third. 30th. So if you're just following the pattern, what comes next? A top 5. Now there is absolutely no data behind that other than this pattern here. But he has at least shown that he really likes Memorial. So I'm willing to bet that he is going to be geared up for this. It wasn't too long ago where he finished third at the RBC Heritage, another course that he has traditionally played very, very well, even though he was not in any kind of form, particularly with his irons coming into the RBC Heritage. And then he finishes third. So he has shown time after time on courses that he's just comfortable, he's going to play well. So I want all of the Patrick Cantlay that I can handle this week. And I understand he's boring and whatnot, but I'd rather win. And I think Patrick Cantlay is going to be a stalwart in lineups this week for some big paydays. Justin Thomas, not in love with it. He hasn't been the best here. Also somewhat popular. Fleetwood depends on if you think he's a unique play, a pivot, or if you think he's chalky. If he really is 8.5%, it's really worth a look because he's pretty he's been good lately. Do note, however, this course value appears blank like Ludwig Aubert. Fleetwood has played here before. It was the last time he played here was 2017. I don't go back that far. I only go back 5 years. So the 2 times Tommy Fleetwood has played the Memorial, he missed the cut. Just be aware of that. But 5th in par 4s, 2nd and around the green, 1st in scrambling, which is paramount around Muirfield. So you would think it's a good fit for him. But the prior 2 times has not been good. So in the 9Ks, again, I'm all about some Patrick Cantlay. I'll be extremely overweight on Patrick Cantlay. I do like Aubert, but I do have some reservations about him. Hideki with the withdrawal risk, I'm not in love with it. I might use Tommy a time or two, but really, if I'm in the 9Ks, it's really about Patrick Cantlay. Really. And I like Morikawa, but it's a fade for me because I would much rather pony up 400 more and go to Hovland, who I'm more confident in. Moving to the 8s. I won't go through every single player, but I love the 8s. There's not really a player other than maybe one or two that I don't want to use in the 8s. I just love the 8s. Start with Wyndham Clark. He's not been particularly great here at Muirfield, but I mean, it wasn't too long ago he was lipping out a putt at the Players to force a playoff. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were talking big game hunter with Wyndham Clark. Seeing him at 8% per Fantasy National and 7% per Gabe Source, it looks like he's getting squeezed out of people's lineups. Give me all the Wyndham Clark I'll take. So if Patrick Cantley does not play well, if Wyndham Clark does not play well, I will lose. But I think Wyndham Clark sets up pretty darn well for Muirfield. I think it's just a matter of time before he rattles off a top-notch performance here. Top 10, top 5, whatever. I really like Wyndham Clark. I have been wrong on Tagala the past couple of times. I said to fade him once. He played well. And I said to play him, and he missed the cut. So he's played 3 times here, and he's been pretty good. The irons have been good. But what worries me is that he's generally a pretty good around-the-green player, and it hasn't been very good lately. So I'm probably going to be a little bit cautious on Tagala. I like Max Homa a lot. He's sitting at 11.5% for both sources. So that's about what you can expect in terms of ownership on Max Homa. I like it. It's fine. I'm much more interested in Wyndham Clark, considering he's 2 to 3% more unique. But I like Max Homa. I also like Spieth. I know that's dangerous to say, considering the irons haven't been very good. And he hasn't taken advantage of par 5s lately. But, man, he has been very good at Muirfield as well. I like Jordan Spieth. Seeing him at 10% and 9% for both sources, you can see I'm just kind of trying to find a lot of uniqueness, considering Victor is going to be popular. Cantley I expect to be popular. So I'm trying to find some uniqueness. A lot of Wyndham Clark, Spieth. Connors is fine. He's just very chalky, but he's fine. Nothing wrong with that. This is probably some chalk I'll eat as well. Do be concerned though. Every time I mention it, he really is not a very good short game player. So he's rising in my rankings all the way to 10th or 12th purely by the numbers, because I only have 5% in around the green and 5% in scrambling. If you have more of an emphasis on these two metrics or in the putting, he's going to fall. He's not a good short game player. So it's probably fine, but you have enough reason to stay away if you're wanting to find someone else in the 8Ks or you're trying to find a pivot. The one player in the 8Ks I just don't want any part of is Sam Burns. Look, he burned me last week. I said to fade him. He finished his top 10. Okay. I mean, he might burn me again this week, but I'm not there with Sam Burns. I'm just not. Fitzpatrick's fine. Noren's fine, I guess. Not as high on Noren. You can see when it's difficult, he has kind of struggled a little bit. Where I'm at a lot in the 8Ks as well, if I'm not talking, or if I'm not doing Wyndham Clark and Homa and Spieth in the upper 8s, I'm down here at the bottom 8s, both of these players, Henley and Sungjae. Now, Sungjae per Fantasy National is a true pivot. This is another discrepancy. Gabe's source has him at close to 14%. I'm obviously much more hoping that he is closer to this 9%, 9.5%. But I really like Sungjae this week. I don't think many people realize that he has 3 top 15s in his past 4 events on the PGA Tour. He's quietly, very quietly, been playing pretty good lately. So I think it's a matter of time before he really pops. And I'm going to try to be early to the party. So give me all the Sungjae. I'll be extremely overweight on Sungjae. Russell Henley's sitting at anywhere between 17 to 18%. I really like Russell Henley. He's just popular. So because of that, I'm going much more with Sungjae, trying to get that uniqueness and hoping that he's closer to 9%, not 14%. But I like both of them. Moving to the 7s, you've got a couple of pivots in here. Cam Young appears to be one. Fantasy National members are nowhere near Cam Young, and kind of have to agree with them. I don't want any part of Cam Young. 4% and 8%. The other pivots in the upper 7s might be J-Day. Yeah, 4.5 and 8.5, 9%. All about the irons. I'm nowhere near J-Day either. In the upper 7s, he's going to be chalky. This is some chalk I'll eat. I really like Siwoo. We talked about him at the reveal of the top 10. I like Denny McCarthy as well. I appreciate that, Bo Berrien. I'm trying to go a little bit quick so that way we have enough time to make lineups. But I want to make sure I hit majority of players since it's a small field. But I do like Denny McCarthy. I am a little concerned, I should say, about his irons. He was in much better iron form coming into the Memorial last year when he lost in the playoff. But no denying his prowess, around the green, putting, scrambling, the par threes, the set of par threes. He's probably the best, 3rd and 8th. Actually, I think he's 2nd. Yeah, Russell Henley's 4th and 1st. So, the second best performer on these par threes is probably McCarthy. At least it has been in the past 3 months. So, there's a lot to like here. I really like McCarthy. He sits at anywhere between 10 and 11%. It's fine. Obviously, you're going to want lower ownership, but you can't always get what you want. So, I'll be happy with that. I am absolutely fading Tom Kim. This just does not feel like a good Tom Kim fit. Think about the places he's played well generally. They're shorter. They tend to be easier as well. So this is neither short nor easy. So I don't want any part of Tom Kim. And my bold fade, if you consider some others not so bold, like Morikawa is really bold, but I'm much more confident in Hovland. But another bold fade of mine. Look, you just can't play everybody, so I'll fade Keegan Bradley. I like enough Siwoo. I like enough Denny McCarthy. We'll hit the mid and low 7s here in a second. I'm okay with not playing a Keegan Bradley. You see here he rates out in the top 20 for me, but I do have some concerns. He's not been the best here because he's played 4 or 5 years. So this course value is full. It's essentially scrambling. Par threes, he hasn't been great. So I do have a little bit of concern with Keegan Bradley. And, again, you just can't play everybody. So moving to the mid-7s, Awaken mentions Willie Z. Looks to be a pivot, actually. 10% per Fantasy National. Only 8.5% per Gabe Source. You still have to worry a little bit about the lingering injury, but, he top 5'd the last time he played here, whether it was last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember, but, that's probably worth a shot. Because you see, he rated in the bottom half in terms of purely by the numbers. The par 4s, he's one of the worst on par 4s in this field. The short game, he's never been known for his short game, scrambling. So that's why he's 51st. But, seeing him at 8 to 10%, yeah, I'm probably going to have him a little bit. Another bold fade of mine will be Straka. Again, there's just plenty of players I like in the mid to low sevens. So this is just a pure fade on ownership. And the fact that he has just not been stellar at the Memorial. He's been fine. He just hasn't been stellar. I mean, it's a little dangerous. 8th in greens when it's difficult. 10th in birdies when it's difficult, sure. But I just like other players more, essentially. One of them being Will Zalatoris. A little bit speculative, but I do like Will Z. I like Christian Bezainu a lot. I know he does. I know he has some middling to maybe even bad metrics here. He's played well here. There's something to be said about a player who has just simply played pretty well here. You get past the off the tee and the birdies are better. It's actually not too bad. Around the green, top 20. Putting on lightning bent, top 20 in scrambling. The par threes, he's pretty darn good, 16th and 17th. So there's a lot to like with Seabez. The fact that he sits at 8.5% per both sources, yeah, I'll be overweight on Seabez. The only other name I want to give you in the low sevens, I'm not in love with it. Again, I'm just highlighting it because he has played well here, and he's played well here in the recent past, is Ricky. Look, the irons haven't been good. He hadn't been good on the par fours. This is all just a play on the fact that he has been good here. He's been good here the last 5 years, and he's unique. Anywhere between 5 to maybe 7 to 8%. I'm not in love with it. I would much, much prefer Seabez to Ricky Fowler, but I do want to casually mention Ricky. Then finally, we'll finish up the preview of the price board. I have 2 names that I want to suggest to you all. His best tee to green last week, so since his win at the Rocket. Yeah, I mean, he has not been good since the Rocket Mortgage. He's had a little bit of some signs. Again, this is nothing really to do with his current form. It's all about the prior performance at the Memorial. So per Fantasy National, there are a couple of players that are gaining or garnering some interest in the 10Ks. Austin Eckroat at 10.5 per Fantasy National. Lee Hodges at 15% per Fantasy National. That is a lot. And I like Lee Hodges. That's just a lot. Per Gabe Source, there is not a single player garnering more than about 7.5%. So it looks like the general public is not in the 6Ks. Members of Fantasy National are going to these 2 players. I wanted to like Lee Hodges, but if he is indeed closer to the 8 to 10%, or heaven forbid if he's in this range, I want no part of it. No, thank you. That's just way too much ownership. Instead, I want to give you 2 other names to consider. The first is Thomas Dietrich. You see the course value. It's not great. He's only played here once, but he's not afraid to go low, especially when it's difficult. 3rd in these par 5s, which you have to take advantage of around Memorial. And with, at least where I play in DraftKings, birdies are what really catapult you up the rankings. So the fact that he goes and gets birdies, even if he mixes in a few bogeys. The fact that he gets birdies in bunches, takes advantage of par 5s, he's good around the green. Yeah, the putter is shaky, but you can say that about a lot of players. So I want to highlight Thomas Dietrich here in the 6Ks, but the quote mad scientist play or the calls special, I'll just go back to Adam Schenk. He played well here last year. He's played well here a couple times. Hits plenty of greens, especially when it's difficult. Scrambles very, very well. Putter is fine on bent. So knowing that he has performed pretty well at Memorial a couple of times, I'll be overweight on some Adam Schenk trying to squeeze in my Scotty or my Rory lineups. And if he doesn't play well, I'll lose. But you got to find some uniqueness when you only have 73 players in the field. So there's a look at the price board where our fellow contestants seem to be going on the price board and some potential pivots. Let's start making some lineups. Start with tiers for those who play tiers contests. Tier 1, we have Scotty, Rory, and Xander. Oof. I mean, everything points to taking Scotty, but he's probably the most popular in that tier for obvious reasons, but I don't see a reason not to take Scotty. So give me Scotty in Tier 1, and I'll try to find some uniqueness elsewhere. Tier 2, Victor, Colin Morikawa, Obear, Cantlay, and Tommy Fleetwood. It is really close for me in this tier between Cantlay and Hovland. I am really, really high. Do you know if any player has a home field advantage? That I don't. I don't know of anyone offhand that makes or calls the greater Columbus area home. So if you know, please, feel free to put that in chat. But I don't, Robarian. Like I said, it's really tough for me to separate Cantlay and Hovland. Per ownership, it looks like it would be Cantlay. So give me Cantlay in Tier 2, but man, it's really close between these two. But I'll take Cantlay. Tier 3, JT, Hideki, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Jordan Spieth. I like Spieth, but if Wyndham Clark is indeed as unique as he appears to be, like he is in Classic, give me Wyndham Clark. So that's where I'm going to try to find my uniqueness and be unique against others in a tiers contest. I'll take Wyndham Clark in Tier 3. Tier 4, Homa, Connors, Ben On, Sam Burns, Matt Fitzpatrick, Noren, and Henley. Connors is probably the, quote, safe choice. But I think he's going to be the most popular. So let's try to beat him as well. Let's go Max Homa. Because Henley's going to be pretty popular as well, I think. Maybe not in the tiers, but yeah, let's just go Max Homa. He's played really darn well here. So Tier 4 will go Max Homa. Tier 5, Sungjae, Finau, Lowry, Cam Young, Tom Kim, Siwoo Kim, and Keegan. For me, it comes down between Siwoo and Sungjae. If you have enough uniqueness, you can probably go Siwoo. But if you're trying to just hit home run after home run, Sungjae's probably going to be unique in this tier. Considering Tom Kim's in here, Siwoo's in here, Keegan's in here. I imagine Sungjae will get forgotten in this tier. So give me Sungjae. In Tier 5, I do not blame you one bit if you take Siwoo. It's a solid choice. Finally, Tier 6, we have Lucas Glover, Ricky, Kitayama, Batia, Chris Kirk, Justin Rosen, Victor Perry. Bleh. I guess give me Ricky. You can think about Glover, I guess. He's probably a higher floor and lower ceiling. It's probably between these two. I'll take Ricky. I don't blame you for Glover. So this tier's construction goes Scotty in Tier 1. Tier 2, I'll go Cantlay. It's really close between Cantlay and Hovland. I'll go Cantlay in Tier 2. Tier 3, I'll go Wyndham Clark. Try to get a lot of uniqueness there. Tier 4, I'll go Max Homa. Tier 5, I'll go Sungjae. Tier 6, I'll go Ricky. I don't feel great about it, but I don't like much in that tier. All right, let's move to making some classic lineups, see where our fellow contestants or some of the lineup shells that our fellow contestants seem to be gravitating to and making, and how we're going to maneuver around all of that chalk. So very clearly the most popular player in the on the slate is Scotty. At least per Fantasy National, it looks like the members of Fantasy National are going to Lee Hodges. So quite a bit of ownership in just those two players. But that frees up a decent amount of money for them. They can probably go into the 8Ks here. Let's see. Elsewhere, if they don't go Lee Hodges, it's probably Eckroat. But they do have Lucas Glover at 7,000. That is garnering some attention as well. Sepp Straka definitely fits in this. And then you have, you know, a low 8 and a mid 8, or maybe a high 7 and an upper 7, or excuse me, a high 7 and a high 8. Yeah, Russell Henley getting a whole lot of ownership here. 8,500 is Connors. Yeah, he's fairly popular. If our fellow contestants are going all the way down to Lee Hodges, you can imagine this is probably kind of a shell of their lineup. Maybe they come off of Russell Henley to Siwoo Kim and come up off of Glover to somebody else. But you get the idea of the kind of shell that our fellow contestants would be making with a Lee Hodges-esque Scotty Scheffler lineup. If they don't go into the 6Ks, it's really, really tough. Again, they got Lucas Glover, per Fantasy National, Billy Horschel garnering some attention. Yeah. But even so, like, he's sitting at 10-4. Already you're at 7,700, so Sepp Straka maybe. Gosh dang it. Sepp Straka, 78 per. So this would be Siwoo and maybe Tony Finau, or yeah, Tony. So if our fellow contestants aren't going into the 6Ks, you know, they're just loading up in the 7s. And that's how their lineup would look. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Yep, we got a full house. I love it this evening for the next signature event. Going big, winning big this week. That's the goal. We're going to try. I'm not always successful, but I give you what I see, and hopefully we make the right decisions. So if our fellow contestants aren't going to Scotty, the second most common play or popular play is Colin Morikawa. And you see this opens up a whole lot for them. They can go Colin Morikawa, Tommy Fleetwood, even though he's unique per Fantasy National. Hideki is also, there's also discrepancy there. Yeah, Justin Thomas is at 13% at both places. Let's throw him in because I'm not too crazy about him. I'm not going to be using him. So maybe this is another portion of a fellow contestants lineup that I want no part of. So Morikawa, JT, coming down into the 8s again. You might have a Ben On. Where's he at? He's 8% per Gabe's source, so Fantasy National is much higher on him. Corey Connors, Sam Burns, Noren sitting at 12% per both. Yeah, let's throw Alex Noren into this. Of course, Russell Henley, who I like, but he's just very, very popular. And, you know, fellow contestants, or you, if you're making this style of lineup, you don't even have to flirt with the 6Ks. You know, you got Lucas Glover down there. Will Zalatoris has been mentioned, who I don't hate. But if we're trying to make the chalkiest lineup we can, this would be like Siwoo Kim. Yeah, Lucas Glover. You know, 16%. This is going to get duplicated a fair amount of times in your big GPPs. So if our fellow contestants aren't going to Scotty Scheffler, this is the kind of lineup I would imagine them building. I'm highlighting Morikawa since he's the second most projected owned player on the slate. This very easily could be Victor Hovland and, you know, move some of this money around and whatnot, but just trying to squeeze in as much chalky plays as I can here to highlight for you all. So if we've seen those style of lineups that are the chalky lineups, how are we going to maneuver around that? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Scotty Scheffler, I'm not doing too many Scotty Scheffler lineups, which is scary, but I just found him really, really hard to build around with no 5Ks. In the 6s, I'm not going in, and another reason why it's hard for me to build Scotty Scheffler lineups is I'm not comfortable going down any further than Adam Schenk. Lee Hodges is getting a lot of popularity. Really, I'm not comfortable with much else down here. You see how poor all of these players rated out for me. I just don't. I'm not anywhere down here, so I'm not any comfortable going any further than Schenk, which means I've got to squeeze in a whole lot here in the lower sevens. You can think about Ricky. That'll save a little bit, and you're playing him on the thought that he has played well here recently. You can think about Will Zalatoris as well. He's not too popular. And then you're in the low eights where you can probably squeeze in a mid 8 or maybe even an upper 8. Maybe you're high on a Max Homa, who's not getting a lot of love. Maybe you're high on a Sati Tagala, who doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of attention. I like Spieth. I know some people are quite wary of him. Let's throw in Tagala. And then we got 76, which is Denny McCarthy, who I'm very, very high on again this week. That's 11%. That's 5% cumulative less than the chalky Scotty Scheffler lineup that we just saw. Tagala maybe not necessarily in the best of form, but he is contended at premier events. Denny McCarthy finished runner-up here last year. Zalatoris is one of the premier players when healthy. Fowler's quite speculative, I'll give you that. And then Adam Schenk for some uniqueness in the 6Ks. This is a lineup that I think has the potential to do really, really darn well, and you've got the best player in the world in it. Another way you could maybe think about this, if you were willing to double dip in the 6Ks, that would give you a lot of freedom as well. If you're willing to do kind of a superstars and super scrubs, like for me, it's just Schenk and Thomas Dietrich, but willing to listen to someone else if they want to throw out a name that they might be interested in the 6Ks. But if you're willing to do double sixes, you're going to gain quite a bit on our fellow contestants. Again, I'm just going to throw in Dietrich into this because those are the two players I'm looking at in the 6Ks. But now you've got 8,000 per player here. You could probably squeeze in a 9. Let's go Patrick Cantlay. Yeah, you got Patrick Cantlay, and now you'll have to round this out with a low 7 and probably a mid 7, but you've got plenty of options in here. Again, Ricky, maybe Seabez, who's played really, really well around Muirfield. And then 7,400, I personally don't like Tom Hoagie, but he's unique. Maybe you like Billy Horschel. I think of those two, I would probably throw in Billy. So you can easily move this around. Maybe you come off of Cantlay. Maybe you come down to a J2 who I'm not necessarily in love with. Maybe you're not afraid of Tommy Fleetwood. If you throw in Tommy into this, and then now you're at 77, you could probably afford to take a chalky Siwoo Kim. You're still only at 11.5 to 12%, as opposed to the 16% that the chalky Scotty Scheffler was, and you can really bring this down a whole lot. Even still, if you were to go to a Denny McCarthy, a Will Zalatoris, McCarthy, 10.5%. There you go. I'd be hard pressed to find this duplicated more than once in your big GPPs if you're willing to double dip in the 6s. But those are not the kind of lineups I've been building mostly, just because I don't feel terribly comfortable going into the 6s as much as possible. Like, I'll do it to fit a Scotty, to fit a Rory. I'll go to Dietrich to fit a Scotty or a Rory, but really, I love the 8s. And I mentioned I'm just going to be using some Victor Hovland. I really like Victor Hovland again this week. I know for Fantasy National he's at 18%, but he's less owned per Gabe source, so we can only hope that's the case. And if you're coming off of Scotty, I mean, you got plenty of room. Let's go Wyndham Clark, Max Homa. Like, you're still in the mid 7s. Tony Finau's, getting some love, but you can think about Tony Finau, Siwoo, Seabez. Is this? Yeah, that's Ricky. I know somebody. How do I feel about Justin Rose? I don't hate it, actually. I don't hate it. Not in love with it by any means, but he didn't rate out particularly well. He's been okay here. The irons have been a little suspect. What bothers me is that he has not taken advantage of the par 5s lately. And if you're not doing that at Muirfield, you're going to get run over. I mean, those are your scoring opportunities. He's been okay at the par 3s, which these are some pretty difficult par 3s. But really, you're just kind of playing. You're playing Justin Rose on the fact that he's been in tough tournaments before, kind of knows his way around the golf course. His course value isn't stellar, but it's not horrendous. Again, at 60, I would much rather try to save 100, go to Dietrich at 68. Maybe go Shank. Like, you see Batia rated out in the top 10 per just the analytics, just purely by the numbers. He's getting hurt by the fact that he's played here one time and it was atrocious. I mean, he was really bad. So if you want current form at the same price as Justin Rose, maybe think about Batia. But I'd much rather use Dietrich or Shank in the 6Ks. Darnell. But there's a look at a potentially unique-ish lineup here. Taking a chance, not going to Scotty Scheffler, and just kind of loading up in the 8s and 7s, and then choose your 10K, whether that's Victor, whether that's Rory or Xander. Another style of lineup that I've been doing, and it's probably going to be popular, is balanced, but I am very confident in finding uniqueness to make a balanced lineup work. Patrick Cantlay is not necessarily a pivot, but he is, the second or third most unique in the 9Ks. I like Patrick Cantlay. Again, Wyndham Clark seems like he's getting squeezed. I like Tagala. I like Homa. We'll throw in Spieth into this one since he's under 10% for Fantasy National. We still have upwards of 7,700 per player. You could throw in a Connors who's, more chalky. I love Sungjae this week. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Sungjae. You'll see him later on social media in the betting card and in the DFS lineups, or the players I use most often. I'm just really high on Sungjae this week. And we're still not even coming close to the 6Ks. If you're willing to drop into the 6Ks, that just frees you up even more to add another 8 or maybe potentially a 9. But even with this build right here, coming to the upper 7s, again, Finau's a little bit garnering some attention, but you can think about a Finau or maybe a Lowry who's played pretty well around Muirfield. Siwoo is the obvious choice, but he's also garnering a whole lot of attention. And then I've been bottoming these lineups out at Seabez or maybe taking a chance on a Will Zalatoris. Maybe a Denny McCarthy. Maybe a Siwoo. This is another, right at 11% for a small field. You're looking at maybe a unique lineup, maybe duplicated once or twice, but I'm just really high on Cantlay. Any balanced lineup that I've been building has been starting with Cantlay, just because that's really about the only place I'm going to in the 9Ks. I'll probably sprinkle some Ludwig Aubert. I'll probably sprinkle a little bit of Tommy Fleetwood if indeed if I think his ownership stays at 8%. But really in the 9Ks, it's Patrick Cantlay. So that tells you the kind of lineups I'm building. It's either Patrick Cantlay balanced lineups, or it's Victor, Xander, choose whatever 10K up top, then dropping into the low 8s, upper 7s, and then filling it out from there. Along with, the smattering of Adam Shanks and Thomas Dietrichs if I want to squeeze in a Scotty or a Rory. But that's what I have for you all. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions or wants to see a lineup shell. Maybe we can work around. But I got a couple of questions to answer. 7 of you answered the poll question. I really appreciate it. You can't play anyone from the other groups. Which of these are you making your core? Really, really tough for me. The most popular answer from the viewers and from chat is Victor, Morikawa, Connors, and Finau. And I like that one a lot. That's probably my second, because I'm so high on Cantlay and I will eat the chalk on Siwoo Kim. I'm probably going to choose Rory, Cantlay, Henley, and Siwoo Kim as my choice. While you say Scheffler and Fleetwood and Sungjae and Bradley is the best, that's also leaving you with the least amount of money. So just to show you all very quickly, Sungjae and Keegan, who is a full fade for me. Like, you're only left with $6,400 per player, just because I was trying to find a 9 to fit with Scotty that made it work. Whereas every one of these other lineups leaves you with the upper 6s, or maybe even 7. Yeah, you're right. It would be different. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Me personally, I'm not comfortable going that far down in the 6Ks or doing it twice, for that matter. So Group 2, the one that I've chosen, leaves you with $6,900 per player. Xander, gosh dang it, Xander, Ludwig, Sam Burns, and Tom Kim leaves you with $6,750, so a little bit less. And then the winner, or the one chosen most often from chat, Connors and Finau, leaves you with 68, or pay up for Scotty. So yeah, see, I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, like I said, you and I have talked about that before, Darnell, and I just don't understand what Yahoo's doing with their pricing. So because in DraftKings, like his pricing is pretty prohibitive considering there's no 5Ks. So I am using a lot of Victor. I'll use some Xander. I like Victor this week. So there's the answer. There's my answer to the poll question. Rory, Cantlay, Henley, and Siwoo. And then for one and done. I am kind of torn right now. I'm of two minds. So I'm actually leading my division right now in one and done thanks to Tom Kim's T4 last week. I jumped the person that was leading. I was in second. I'm now in first. So a part of me thinks, do I want to play safe, try to protect this lead, or do I want to, potentially take a chance, considering this is a signature event, a small field, a small cut. So long as the player makes the cut, they're going to make good money. There are two different ways to approach it. the two players I'm between right now in terms of one and done, I'm between Patrick Cantlay, because I did not use him at the RBC Heritage, and Sung Jae. I think Sung Jae's in great form, and I think this could be a good spot for him. So those are the two players I'm between right now. If that changes, I'll let you know next week, next Sunday night. But that's where I'm leaning right now. I don't have Scotty. I don't have Rory. I don't think I have Xander. And I'd also, if I do have Xander, I'd probably want to save him for a major championship, because I just feel confident in his ability to be there in a major championship. So I'm leaning Cantlay and Sung Jae right now. Also I'm hoping these guys might be a tad bit unique in terms of one and done. Could be wrong with that, but I'm hoping they're a little bit unique. So that's what I have for everybody. I've got a lot of people to thank. Stewie, thanks for jumping into chat tonight. Brobarian, P, Awaken, Darnell, thanks to everybody for jumping in chat and participating in the poll question, the interaction. It's a lot of fun. I love what I do, interacting with you all and trying to build optimal lineups and putting giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. So thanks to you all for jumping in chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. Reminder that I'll be over in Gabe's Substack chat right after the show this evening. We're going to continue the DFS talk over there. We're going to talk about game theory, our favorite areas of the price board. We're going to see how different Gabe and I are. Last week we were vastly different. So it's always an interesting discussion. You don't want to miss out on that. We're going to be over there here shortly. So I'm glad you had fun, Brobarian, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it out there. For all the wagers you have made this week for the Memorial, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Memorial, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.